So, riddle me this. What happens if you give the Morbius writers $80 million more Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney? Well, you get Madam Web. This movie is probably one of the most foul yet fascinating pieces of media I've consumed this year. To all the traditional conventions of filmmaking, this movie is pretty much blasphemy, and if I describe The Flash as a clusterfuck, this movie is complete chaos. I had the displeasure of seeing this film in IMAX because my buddy got the Showtime run, so a lot of money ended up being spent on this trip. And I'll tell you, there's absolutely no reason to see this film in IMAX. It did not enhance the experience at all whatsoever, and I'm gonna be honest, there's no reason to see this movie at all. About 50% of this film, my hands were just on my head in the sheer disbelief of what was happening. This movie has it all. Bad cinematography, bad editing, bad acting, and bad audio mixing, which is crazy. I swear every single one of the main villain's lines were overdubbed with the most flat performance I've ever heard. If you told a brick to speak in a random European accent, it would have given more life to those performances. When it comes to the acting, I will always give the benefit of the doubt to the actors, and above all else, it is the director's responsibility to try and get a specific performance out of the actor. And whatever the case was, it was a painful performance. This film was shot like a shitty SNL skit with porn acting. Again, I don't blame any of the actors here, because I think outside of the film, everyone here is actually talented. But when you've been given a script by the Kobe and Shaq of writing dog shit, there really isn't much else you can do here. These fuckers arguably three-peated in their quest to make dookie-ass movies, and Madam Web was the stinkiest of the bunch. So, I know I'm a bit late to the party, but let's take a look at what made Madam Web so stinky. Spoiler warning if you care to watch this film. So, the film takes place in 2003 New York City, where Dakota Johnson plays Cassandra Cassie Webb, aka Madam Web, a quirky EMS paramedic who's just a bit of an asshole. Her partner on the job is Uncle Ben, who, yes, finally makes it out of a Spider-Man related film alive, and he is genuinely like the only sane person in this movie. Anyway, the two are called to an active scene where, long story short, they save some dude, then Cassie falls and has this near-death experience that awakens her hidden psychic spider powers. Here we got one of far too many Doctor Strange-esque scenes where we see a bunch of shit from the past and future all jumbled around Cassie. A lot of these visions were really jolting thanks to the editing and special effects. So much shit gets thrown around and it ends up being really messy. One particular object that they decided to highlight in this underwater vision was literally just a giant letter S from some sign. Oh, but don't worry, they're gonna pay off that shit foreshadowing like 3 times in the final battle. Once Cassie's done tripping out, she wakes up after Uncle Ben did CPR on her, and now she has future sight. Yay! Now, it's explained in the opening minutes of the film that her mom was bitten by a special spider so she could give birth to Cassie. What was a bit weird is how it took 30 some odd years for these powers to awaken. Anyway, now Cassie has the powers of Madam Web, which are just random visions of the future that she has no control over. A little bit underwhelming, I know. The next little bit of the film is super boring and pretty irrelevant, so I'm gonna go double time here. Cassie realizes she has powers, they have a little baby shower for Mary Parker. Yes, this is also an Uncle Ben origin story. One of Cassie's friends dies on the job, she lets a pigeon fly into her apartment, and then Cassie manages to find herself on this extremely fateful subway car that was way too clean to be a New York City train. Anywho, Cassie starts tripping balls, again, and this sequence was yet another lowlight for the editing. These visions jump around way too much, and a lot of it is irrelevant. This particular time, it focuses way too much on Cassie's interactions with the other passengers. The whole point of these visions are to show that 3 girls are in danger of being murdered. They could have just shown them being murdered a few times to Cassie and it would have gotten the point across, but they decide to overcomplicate it. So, Cassie realizes this funky Hallmark-looking Jonas brother is trying to kill some kids, and of course, she saves them. So, quick TLDR on the bad guy. His name's Ezekiel Sims, a former explorer that killed Cassie's mom over a little spider they found in Peru. He harnessed its powers and became evil Spider-Man. After having the same vision of his death at the hands of 3 teenage spider girls, he sleeps with an NSA agent, kills her, then subsequently hacks in the NSA and stalks said girls. Eventually he finds them on this fateful subway car. Anyway, now they're on the run, and so much of the dialogue is absolutely miserable here. None of these characters are all that likable or well developed, and as a result, these attempts at witty dialogue fall flat frequently. Anyway, let's go double time and get some boring shit out the way. The little miserable gang go outside the city to some little forest area as a hideout. Cassie gives them some snacks and then fucks off to her apartment for 3 hours to figure out what the hell is going on. She tells the girls to stay put, and obviously they don't listen. The girls head off to this diner to get food and make the biggest scene possible whilst flirting with some random guys. Ezekiel Sims obviously finds them and tries to kill them. Then Cassie comes in to save the day and decks our shitty Spider-Man with a car where they flee to a motel. In said motel, Cassie's like, fuck yeah, your parents can deal with this shit tomorrow, I'ma head out of here. And then they're all like, we have no parents, and Cassie's like, wait, no literally me, oh my god. So our four lovely protagonists girl boss and make up with each other immediately, only for Cassie to then fuck off to Peru. See, at this point, they learn that the answers rely on Cassie's mom's research in Peru. So, to make the plot even more ridiculous, in the midst of a psychopath trying to kill them, Cassie takes a flight to Peru. And what makes even less sense is that earlier in the film, she was accused of taking these girls hostage, which just gets dropped for the next portion of the movie. Anyway, now in Peru, Cassie meets the Peruvian Spider-Man who saved her life as a child. He then pushes her into a Kool-Aid lake where she gets Doctor Stranged for the second time, figuring out what happened to her mother as well as completely mastering her powers. And we get the worst iteration of the great power line, and I quote, "When you take on the responsibility, great power will come." Now we cut back to New York with the three girls at this little safe house being Uncle Ben's place. And remember how I said this was also an Uncle Ben origin story? Well, Peter Parker is about to be born. Uncle Ben, why do I hear boss music? So in the house, Mary Parker's water breaks, now they gotta drive to the hospital. And for some reason, the girls decided to go with them, putting everyone in danger. Obviously, as they start to drive downtown, they're chased by Bogwater Spider-Man again. But guess who's here to save the day? You know it, it's Madam Web, who is now, like, spiritually enlightened. She hits Ezekiel Sims with the ambulance that she was driving, which he jumps into. This is generally one of the funniest moments in our 15-person theater. My friends and I just said out loud he jumped into it and everyone started dying. It genuinely makes no sense. Shitty Spider-Man jumps into the danger. Where is this man's spider sense? Like, this is the second time in the film where Cassie hits him with a moving vehicle. Hey, maybe Cassie's real superpower is being a pure red-blooded American trucker. So now it's time for our fun final battle that really isn't any fun at all, and frankly doesn't make much sense. Cassie and the girls drive off in an ambulance luring Spider Dingus to some building that they kind of just blow up. Then they try to escape to the rooftop of said building to head toward a helicopter that Cassie called in through the ambulance, which got blown up from fireworks going off. So now Mr. Sims is on the roof and we just get some really shitty action where now they actually fight each other. There are two really distracting parts about the climax. The first is, again, the extremely flat overdub from the main villain. Normally in Spider-Man movies, when he's swinging around or fighting bad guys, you can tell he's going through the motion. He'll be like, whoa, hey, hold on, because he's having to actively avoid something. With Ezekiel Sims, he just always sounds the exact same at all times. It's like, in the midst of punching dudes and, like, you know, running on buildings, he'll be like, I will kill you. And it just takes away part of the immersion. And if you're trying to make him more intimidating through this voice, then just have him speak in between the fighting. The other extremely distracting part of this final fight is that they abuse the handheld shaky cam to try and stimulate action. A lot of this fight is stationary, and they just start shaking the camera to make it look like this is a really cool, really intense final battle, but in reality, not much is happening. Anyway, we get a lot of goofy shit here as well, including the big payoff of S, where it just falls a few times. Like, I genuinely don't know why it was relevant. Like, is it S for Spider-Man? I don't even know, man. The Madam uses her powers and stops Ezekiel Sims, with him getting crushed by the letter P from the Pepsi sign. Which, why the fuck did we foreshadow the S if the P was gonna crush him? I just can't. This film just doesn't make sense sometimes. Don't make sense. After Cassie falls in some water, basically dying again, and then coming back to life after a really awkward CPR scene. As a result of this battle, she becomes both blind and paralyzed. Now, what I don't understand is that if she can see the future, she let herself get blind and paralyzed. It wasn't this big avoidable sacrifice. She just lets this happen. Who in the writer's room thought that, like, you could have easily had it be like, oh yes, I'm sacrificing myself for the greater good, and then she gets blown up, and then fine, you know, there's no other option. But she just kind of gets shit on, man, like, This is probably the worst final confrontation in a superhero movie that I've seen in a while, because nobody has fucking powers. All Cassie has is an advanced spider sense. Other than that, she's a normal human being. The three girls who are supposed to become different versions of Spider-Girl or Spider-Woman, they don't get their powers either. And then we have Costco Spider-Man, who basically just sticks to walls. No Spider-Girls or real Spider-Man to be found. When you really start to think, this is some of the most wasted potential for a superhero film. You have a very talented cast of main actors, and a few of them being in the peak of their powers right now in terms of popularity, and in a superhero world where a lot of female leads have been done dirty by bad writing, this would be the perfect opportunity to say, hey look, we've got a really cool all-women spider squad that's badass. But no! You don't even let them have fucking powers! Like, come on, man! I do think for a Madam Web story, the plot shouldn't have even gone in this direction in the first place. They should have focused more on her powers, significance, and why she was so important for the Spider-Verse. At least that's more probably what I would do. But if you are gonna go in the direction of, you know, having her protect these girls and creating a little spider squad, how about we actually see it, not foreshadow it at the end of the movie, in a film that likely will never be made. Anyway, our heroes are now victorious. Madam Web is now in a wheelchair with glasses so she can sort of look comic accurate. The girls are all super good friends, and Peter was born, which likely implies impending doom for Adam Scott's Uncle Ben. This movie was an absolute shit show from top to bottom, a true cinema sin that jumps around and has some of the strangest plot conveniences out there. In terms of the overall review, I by no means can recommend this movie, but I could probably rewatch this with the right amount of alcohol. So my rating is don't watch without friends and sober out of 10.
So, while my character in the movie may be able to see the future, I also can. And I know what the future brings. I know that when you see Madam Web, you're gonna love it. In fact, I think you're gonna see it twice.